Welcome to my final presentation for marketing seminar, as well as for UnitedHealth Group on a theoretical type 2 diabetes prevention program, which I believe could be implemented on behalf of UnitedHealth Group. So first off, jumping right into it, just to give you a little bit of a background here, I will be going through 6 main steps. The first is community background. The second is the company background, focusing on UnitedHealth Group. The third is the overall idea of the prevention program. The fourth is the implementation, how to get it into the school system. The fifth is the metrics behind measuring for success within this program and how we can deem it successful. And six is the conclusion, the overall outcomes, and what could come from this prevention program. So first, community background. I will be focusing in the 55404 district of Minneapolis. This is a smaller community. But before I get into this community specifically, I want to talk about one of the community members, Kelly. Kelly is a young student within the school system. She's a good student, gets good grades, and is definitely one of the top in her class. She enjoys socializing, super friendly, outgoing, loves talking to people. She's a great sister to her 2 younger siblings, and she's very creative, as you can see by her outfit here. She's just easygoing and a great member of this community. However, some things that are underlying problems for Kelly within this community is that her neighborhood and her community as a whole have been overwhelmed by the riots following the death of George Floyd this summer. A few of the businesses her family would typically attend and shop at were destroyed. Her community is starting to become unsafe with a lack of police presence, and it's dangerous every now and then for Kelly to go out. Education. As I mentioned, she's a great student. She performs well. She's in the top of her class, but her school is in a district that far underperforms the Minnesota average, which I will show you in a little bit here. Next, poverty. Kelly's community, the 55404 community, has been struck with poverty. Both her community and her family have low household incomes and struggle to live comfortably, especially mentioning that Kelly has 2 younger siblings, making her the oldest of 3. And finally, health. The health within this community is full of many different diseases, especially diabetes. Kelly's friends and families around her struggle with health complications due to the lack of resources within this community, as well as health education within the community. So now moving on into some numbers and analytics within the community. The 55404 community and health, to break it down here a little bit, the total population is just about 27,000 people. The median income is just under $27,000 compared to the Minnesota average of $68,000. That's not quite half. The poverty rate is 37.8% compared to the Minnesota average of only 10%. And finally, there's not necessarily a solid measure of diabetes within this community. However, communities that have income of less than $35,000 a year in Minnesota are shown to have a 9.2% rate of diabetes. That's incredibly high. Compared to that of $35,000 or more, 5.1%. And so, again, pointing you back up to the median income, just under $27,000, that's $8,000 below that income, which changes the diabetes rate so drastically within this community. So now taking a peek at the 55404 education within the community, it's made up of about, between K through 8, there's about 4,600 students. Now, I want to highlight that the community is highlighted in dark blue among these charts so that you can follow this a little bit easier. So starting off with math proficiency, the 55404 community has an average of only 39% of their students being proficient in math, compared to the Minnesota average of 57%. Now, that doesn't mean that only 39% of the students can do math. That's not what that means. What it means is that only 39% of the students are meeting the benchmark, which is incredibly low. Moving on to reading proficiency, we're seeing even lower numbers within the 55404 community of 32%. The Minnesota average is 60%. We're seeing about half of the proficiency compared to the average within the state. This is incredibly low and quite devastating, honestly. And finally, we're seeing that the minority enrollment within this community is 92% compared to the Minnesota average of 34%. So, to put this all in perspective, what we're seeing is a minority community of students facing inequities through lack of proficiency in their education system. This is quite devastating and can definitely be addressed. So, as I mentioned, we are seeing inequities within this community. First, to mention, low income and high poverty rates, they correlate to higher percentages of diabetes. As I mentioned, the rate within this community would estimate to be about 9.2%, if not higher. The lack of accessibility to healthy foods also increases chances of type 2 diabetes due to insufficient funds for basic groceries like healthy whole foods. And then lack of accessibility to proper health care and proper health education. Moving on, we're seeing inequities, implications of COVID-19 on the minorities in this community throughout the nation, as well as those in poverty. A couple things that I want to bring to light here. First off, distance learning. Those in poverty, those that do not have access to proper technology to do these kind of learning systems within the school, they're falling behind significantly, significantly. Not to mention, along with this, students are starting to develop bad habits, staring at a screen all day, sitting in their seat, not playing with their friends, not socializing, and not moving their bodies. Along with that, they might either have a lack of food in their house or a lack of healthy food, increasing their chances of diabetes down the road. And finally, a lot of these parents within the community are out of work given their job types. This is incredibly devastating what this disease has placed on this community. As I mentioned earlier, too, riots have left a lasting impact on the community through destroying many businesses. Some of these businesses will return and try to rebuild, but many of them are starting to move out. Even those that have not been destroyed are starting to move out of the community. We're getting a lack of access to basic businesses that families in this community need to go to. We're seeing underperformance in the main education topics. I went through that in detail, and it is vital that these students start to get better proficiencies in these main education topics. And finally, we're seeing inequalities for the minorities in the education system. Statistically, we're seeing that minorities are undereducated compared to white students throughout the nation. And this is nothing new. This has been going on for decades. And it's really something that, and I'll get into this more in depth later, but something that UnitedHealth Group could play a part in changing. So now going into UnitedHealth Group and the company background specifically focused on the year 2020, I'm going to start with the good. So the good is obviously it's based in the Twin Cities area, employs many people within the Twin Cities area, employs about 320,000 people globally, and thousands of people in our communities here. They just released their first sustainability report, which encompasses the next generation health system, encompasses people and culture, responsible business practices, and environmental health. So this is something that UnitedHealth Group did for the first time this year, and is really trying to make the healthcare system more equitable for everyone. It's also pledged to donate $5 million to those in poverty impacted by COVID-19. And as I briefly mentioned before, it's battling inequities to make the healthcare system more equitable for everyone. So the bad, within 2020 specifically, I believe that it is missing opportunities to help the younger generations within its own Minnesota community. I worked at UnitedHealth Group this summer as a marketing intern, and we did a lot of things to focus on younger generations. However, a lot of it I noticed was quite a bit out of the state. And though it's a good thing, UnitedHealth Group is trying to impact communities outside of its own. It needs to be a little bit introspective and try to help its own community, specifically the younger generations, and potentially the 55-404 community. UnitedHealth Group released record earnings in quarter two, along with many other large corporations. But I want to point out that their profits were $6.64 billion in quarter two, which was during the height of the pandemic. And so basically, what this says is this was double their normal profits. People couldn't go to hospitals, get the healthcare services. So United Health Group wasn't paying out any claims. Rather, they were just taking in the revenues from the premiums that their customers were paying because of a health crisis with globally. It was a pandemic, obviously. So quite controversial. Some people might say it's a good thing. I'll get more into depth on this in a little bit with some research that I did. And finally, and they're having a poor brand perception due to this increased profits. And again, I will get into this shortly here. So here are the perceptions of United Health Group. This survey was taken with people in the Minneapolis area, within the community, who know of United Health Group. So the overall perception, the majority was indifferent. If you factor out indifferent, overall the perception was highly favorable, 47.7%, and unfavorable was just a sliver. So that's, in a way, it's great for United Health Group. However, when my survey respondents heard that United Health Group brought in record profits during Q2 of 2020, during really the height of the pandemic, it significantly decreased the perception of the company by nearly 50%. That is a large chunk of the brand's perception. So they, there's not a specific measurement financially, but this has done damage to their company. Now, I wanted to bring up a quote from the CEO of United Health Group, Dave Wickman. He said, this is on his LinkedIn page, by the way. He said, our ultimate ambition is to build the next generation health system in a socially conscious way. Now, I think that speaks volumes. And I think that there's tons of opportunity and potential for United Health Group to get involved in more areas than they're already involved in. Especially within its own community, as I've mentioned so many times. But this just goes to show that United Health Group is evolving, and they're trying to be socially conscious in everything that they do, and not just focused on their shareholders, rather their stakeholders within their community. So now let's get down to the idea. Let's combine both United Health Group and the 55404 community for the prevention program that I'm suggesting. Really, what this comes down to is giving back to the community that United Health Group has profited off of. It's as simple as that. That's my main message here. So the purpose of this, obviously, as I mentioned, United Health Group has a great opportunity to help the community that's based in. As I mentioned, the 55404 community is facing inequities from COVID, from low income, from high rates of undereducated minorities, and high risk of diabetes. There's so many things going on within this community that quite simply could be changed by a large corporation like United Health Group. And I just want to point out again, United Health Group has continuously pledged to giving and can give back some of its rather controversial earnings from Q2, nearly $7 billion. That is quite incredible. And they don't necessarily need all of that money. And though not all of it was from United Healthcare, the insurance side, they can definitely leave an impact on their community with that money. So what I'm suggesting is a pro bono prevention program. This program would be a 5-year type 2 diabetes prevention program within that 55404 school district. Again, the community is at high risk for the disease of type 2 diabetes. Diabetes is the 7th leading cause of death in the US. And this program would target students K through 8. Now, I do want to mention that type 2 diabetes doesn't necessarily impact a large amount of students or kids within that age range. However, that's why this is a prevention program. This program will prevent these students, teach them how to eat healthier, sleep better, and exercise more frequently in order to reduce the risk of getting type 2 diabetes down the road. And that's why it's a 5-year prevention program at a minimum. What this prevention program would do was, as I mentioned, implement simple practices for students to track their health and become educated on diabetes, the danger it imposes, as well as how to enhance their health. So United Health Group would do 2 different forms of donations. First, they would reward schools for participating. That's an upfront cost. I'll get into that in depth in a minute here. And they would have a lump sum, basically a budget of $5 million over 5 years. So to talk a little bit about the benefits, first off, it improves the community in terms of health and in terms of student performance. With tracking sleep, tracking exercise, and tracking diet, we're going to see enhancements within students' health that lead to better performance within the community. The benefits for United Health Group is it upholds United Health Group's mission and core values. And finally, it has the ability to improve United Health Group's brand perception. Obviously, this is targeted to be a win-win. And when thinking about this from a company standpoint, they also need to factor in what this can do for them. That's unfortunately sometimes the reality of business. So trying to outline all the benefits here on a large scale. So just to point out a couple more survey data points here, if United Health Group implemented a type 2 diabetes program in the Minneapolis School District, again, specifically 55404, and donated over $1 million, would this improve your perception of the health insurance company? Overwhelmingly, the answer was yes, with a 91%. So the implementation, this is where we get into the logistics of the prevention program. First off, I want to show how I screened for the schools. I broke it down first by public schools because public schools often need more resources than private schools, specifically within this community. So that was my first screener. The second was students. I wanted the schools to have over 400 students within their schools so that we can leave a large scale impact. And we're not just feeding into schools that are very small. We want this to be a large scale impact. And finally, we are trying to target grades K through 8. So basically starting these kids young on this prevention program. And once they're transitioned into high school, they will basically have created a habit for themselves on this prevention program. So now moving into the timeline for this. So really there's 3 phases. The first phase is year 1, and this is focusing 100% on the implementation. United Health Group will provide Fitbit devices, very similar to what I'm wearing here, a relatively inexpensive device compared to some of the other devices on the market. And I will break down the finances of this in the next couple slides. But providing Fitbit devices for students within the school and really informing the administration of how they can use the Fitbit devices to track student health and enhance it if the students and their parents consent and choose to participate. And I want to throw out basically a disclaimer here is that United Health Group would not be tracking the data from the students. Really, these students would have the accessibility to do this all on their own with the school's help and with their parents' help. They would track their sleep, be able to log their water, their calorie intake, and it would track their exercise. Very simple methods that can be tracked while the student puts a device on the wrist. The second phase is year 2 through 4. This is to analyze and improve. And what that means is for both United Health Group and for the students and the administration, they will be analyzing what's going well in this program, personal performance, and how they can improve, set new goals from a company standpoint, and set new goals from a student's standpoint, whether that's weight loss, whether that's more sleep, whatever that may be for these students. And I mentioned here, students will use previous year's data to set new goals for themselves to try to beat. In a way, they'd be competing with themselves, so they're not comparing themselves to other students. And they'll be incentivized by United Health Group with small prizes, t-shirts, water bottles, lanyards, etc. And the final phase is phase 3, year 5. And that's just a measure to take all the data and see, what overall student improvements and potential diabetes reductions have occurred through this time. So the donations, to break this down, as I mentioned, there's a $50,000 donation to each school that joins the program up front. There will be a donation of 4,600 Fitbits to the 55404 school district, allowing the school district to disperse of them as they see fit. And again, allowing students to track their own health. And the rewards, the secondary rewards on top of the $50,000 initial donation is based on participation per year. So if the school gets 25% of students to participate, $25,000. 50% is $50,000. And anything over 75% is $75,000. So with that in mind, that fits right into our budget of $5 million, as well as some other expenses that fit in there as well. And really, the idea of the percentage participation is for one, the school to benefit, but two, to try to get the students to really believe in this program. So now really crunching the logistics, timing will be 5 years. Up to $5 million will be donated. And the donation allocation breaks down as follows. So $69,000 for, excuse me, $690,000 for the Fitbits. That's estimated of $150 per unit. Buying in bulk will probably be cheaper, but to shoot high, we're going with nearly $700,000 for 4,600 units. Again, $50,000 for initiating technology. Now that's someone going out and helping the administration with all of these setups. That's basically paying one of our workers currently to go and set this up. $50,000 for incentives for children to track the program. That's T-shirts, water bottles, lanyards, etc. $400,000 initial donation. Again, $50,000 per school for the first year if they choose to participate. For 8 schools, that's $400,000. And then $3 million in total rewards, up to $75,000 for 8 schools over 5 years. Crunching the numbers, it adds up to exactly $3 million that's our cap. So this is all of our cap here, which would add up to exactly $5 million. And then finally, we would do training, as I mentioned, initiating the technology. We would have a coordinator to set up devices, to provide suggestions of the administration of how to use these devices, the best ways to train students, help students. And along with that, this coordinator would set up posters in the halls, if schools allowed, to help students with their devices and suggestions for healthy habits as they're walking past, making sure they're wearing it right, you know, suggestions on food, etc. And to give you an example of this, this would be one of the in-school posters. This is a broad example combining everything within this program, talking about wearing the Fitbit, drinking water, eating healthy, and sleeping properly. We would have a total of 4 different types of posters, one for the Fitbits, talking just how to wear the Fitbits, one for water, talking about all the benefits of consuming enough water per day, one for food, talking about how food can enhance health, and what to do if students don't have access to maybe whole foods and expensive food items. And finally, how to get right amount of sleep, avoiding blue light, avoiding video games late at night, and trying to wind down earlier. So that was the prevention program, and that was quite a bit to take in. But along with that, we have to measure success, and we need metrics for everything that I just laid out here. So the metrics on a large scale, there's 2 different ways we're going to measure this. First is for the 55404 community, and secondly is for UnitedHealth Group. So the 55404 community, we want to see a 2% reduction in student type 2 diabetes, and that's going to be measured further down the road. So it's a 5-year program. We might not see these successes come till the end of this program, or even a couple years after that, but we will be measuring it yearly to see if we are able to reduce this. Now, this is a lofty goal, but we think it's completely achievable with the simple practices that we will be advocating for. The second is a 15% increase in reading proficiency, bringing it up to the average, and then a 24% increase in math proficiency, again, bringing it up to the average. And finally, for UHG, UnitedHealth Group, we want to see a 15% increase in brand perception. We'll send that survey out again to these same respondents 5 years down the road, explaining what we did and see if that raises the brand perception like it said it did. And as well as we'll send out a survey on a large scale also. So to conclude, the impact that is left on Kelly's community is that her community will become a stronger, more equitable place over the next 5 years through education, income, and health. outlined below, we're going to see the student's education become enhanced. Students like Kelly, who are at the top of her class, her community growing in terms of education will allow her to springboard into universities and places that she didn't really think were possible before, as well as her peers. In turn, when Kelly and students like her go and they get great educations after their primary schooling, uh, they're going to see the community is going to see a return on income through students pouring back into the community after the great success that they've seen in this type of program and really what it has allowed them to do. And finally, health. Obviously, we want to see improvements in health. And I believe that we will with this program, preventing younger generations from developing a disease that is so preventable, but is so rampant within our country. And it's very saddening, but it's very preventable. And someone like an entity like United Health Group easily has the power to step in and make a difference here. So thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope that resonated with you. Obviously, this is a pre-recorded uh, presentation. So if you have questions, you can email me, tony.harris28@yahoo.com. I would love to chat more. These are just fun ideas I love to think about. And to show you my sources, here are my sources. I have 4 pages of them. I did an extensive amount of research on this to make sure that what I am talking about is logistical and can become a reality. So thank you for listening and feel free to reach out.